joining me now, just as I said, my friend, my brother, Ime Elugbe.
Hello.
Thank you so much, man, for joining me
Thank you
today.
for
I
having me.
appreciate it.
It's a privilege.
Coming all the way from Jonesboro, it is exciting to have you on the show.
Yes.
I mean, we can jump right in.
Right.
Your deal for the community is
Yes.
Futures for Felons.
Yes. Future for felons. Yes.
What is Futures for Felons? What is that all about?
Well, it's an organization that advocates for the rights of felons in society. We believe that felons are not treated fairly. They are discriminated against. They are disenfranchised. They are marginalized. They are alienated, ostracized, and we believe that that is unfair.
Okay.
Our core beliefs are steeped in the Christian faith because I am a minister, and so our beliefs are steeped in the Christian faith.
Gotcha.
And go
Well,
ahead.
with Future for Felons, I think it's a great thing because it seems as if, and I've heard you say this before, and I heard your wife say before that everybody has rights except for it's seemingly except for felons.
Right, absolutely, and but the truth of the matter is, when we first of all, the church, and then society, we need to begin to see people the way God
Right.
sees people.
Right.
And when we do that, and when we begin to do that, we'll begin to realize that every human being has a dignity, a worth, a value, and rights that cannot and should not be violated.
Right.
Okay, and so the problem is people, you know, they see felons as less than human. They, I mean, we are not what we did. Okay,
Right.
we are not
Right.
what we are not the sum total of the bad stuff we have done. Okay.
Now, interesting. I got a question because this is quite interesting. Most people say that, oh no, felons are not discriminated against. How can you say felons are discriminated against? Give me an example of discrimination towards felons.
Well, for example, let's take even housing. Most private property management application forms, there's going to be that box there. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? And if you answer yes, guess what? You're not getting the apartment. I mean, I have personal experience with that.
Okay.
So, I live this. Okay, and so same thing with employment. I've been turned down because of my felony conviction. So I know firsthand the discrimination that felons face. So anybody that's saying that, they are wrong.
Or they're just uninformed.
Right.
And I think what we have to do, and I'm so grateful for what you are doing with the organization, and I think it's important that people are educated on
Right.
what's going on.
Right.
Now, you did something very interesting not long ago. You showed a film.
Right.
And so, what exactly was the film that you showed?
Okay, it was like a documentary,
Right, right.
and it was called the 13th, and it's based on the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which basically states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist in the United States or any territory that the United States has jurisdiction over,
Right.
except, now there's that clause, except in the case of punishment for a crime. The abolition of slavery and how from there it went to the convict lease system, which was another, way to enslave blacks, with prison labor. Okay, and then from there it went to the black codes or the, vagrancy laws. Okay, you could be, it was a crime. If you didn't have a job, it was a crime. And so those were those vagrancy laws all the way down to Jim Crow laws,
Right.
and then from Jim Crow to this era that we're in, which is mass incarceration.
Right. So you were able to um, show this film to about how many people showed up for this?
Oh, a handful, I'd say 10.
Okay.
Say about 10.
So you push this, but what we have to do is we just have to do better of informing and partnering together
Right.
to make sure that people know when
Absolutely.
these types of things are going on, so that we can get them out there to see this, because it's
Exactly.
something that is sorely needed.
Right.
People need to be informed about these types of things.
Exactly, exactly, and I mean, it seems as if a lot of people have the mindset of it doesn't affect me. Yes, it does affect you. For one, it costs $30,000 to house one inmate a year. That money is coming from the taxes, your dollars,
Right.
and 1 in 10 African American males is either in prison or on some type of community supervision, which is probation or parole. Interestingly, when we were at Greater Dimensions at our church, which was the first church we spoke at, I asked the question. I said, by show of hand, raise your hand if you know, if you are a felon, or if a family member is a felon, or if a friend, either you or someone in your family, or you know someone that's a felon.
Right.
And just about every hand went up.
Oh yeah.
Because either you are, or you're connected
Somehow.
So I just did that to show them, listen, this is our problem. Yeah, so you might not be, but you are connected to somebody that is, and so by that reason you are affected by this. And I always say, I always say that if you don't protect the rights of the guilty, you will endanger the rights of the innocent, because we're out here amongst the innocent. Okay, the prison is land of the guilty. Out here, land of the innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is they take someone from land of the guilty, which is prison, and bring him out here, but they expect the person to function like he's still in there.
Right.
Okay, see, land of the guilty is no opportunities, no rights. Okay, we understand that. That's prison.
Right.
But when you bring someone out here, then protection of rights, this is a requirement. This is a requirement, and a failure to do that is an injustice, and it's being done, which also that 13th documentary talks about. It's being done for the purposes of political and economic exploitation and gain and profit. So this is why.
Now, didn't it used to be that sending someone to prison or incarcerating someone was for rehabilitation?
Right, absolutely. You're so right. It used to be an open system where the goal was rehabilitation, and basically your parole officer or your probation officer were like social workers. Okay, that was the way they were like social workers, and that system was based on discretion. And so if you were rewarded for if an inmate was showing good behavior, they could be let out and their sentence could be done away with. Okay, and then there was a lot of programs. Okay, so because the goal was rehabilitation. Well, with Nixon coming in and declaring the war on drugs. Okay, there was this war on drugs, and from there, that era entering into the 70s, the crime rate was escalating, and so then there was this push for tighter security, and so the system became closed, and then the goal was now they cut down a lot of social programs, and they bolstered security. Okay, and so then the probation and parole officer became like law enforcement. They cut down there was, I believe, 350 college programs, slashed down to 12. Okay, and so then the goal was no longer rehabilitation, but punishment, which is where we are now. So, it's just, okay, we're punishing them, and they are okay. These are past members of society, not future. Okay, so pack them in like a bunch of sardine,
Right.
and we don't care about them.
Right. I remember a time when a probation officer wore a suit and tie.
Right.
And now they wear a gun and badge.
Right.
You know, and it's amazing that we're living in a day and time where a parole officer, someone who should be a type of social worker,
Right.
Has to carry a gun and badge, or feels the need to carry a gun and badge,
Right.
and expects the the one that they are supposedly helping, they expect them to make real change. Like you said,
Exactly.
they're taking them from one area, putting them in another, expecting them to remain this
to
same.
act like they're back there. And if we see, if we study the journey of Israel from Egypt to the Promised Land, that is a prototype of anybody who is coming out of any form of bondage. Okay, Egypt they were in bondage there. So if you're coming out of prison, addiction, whatever the form of bondage you're coming out of, the journey of Israel from Egypt to Canaan is a prototype of what people go through. So it is difficult just coming out of bondage. Okay, and so if we study the Israel when they were coming out, the Lord said, "Listen, I purposely made them pass by the way of the Red Sea, not the way of the Philistines, even though that was the short way. I made them go the long way because he knew they were not ready. He said if they saw war, they would turn back and say, hey, I want to go back to bondage, which is what is happening to ex-prisoners. It's hard out here, and they almost feel comfortable back in prison. It's like, man, I had it better off in there than out here, and so it leads to this recidivism rate, which is very high, and it's 9 times out of 10 it leads to reoffending.
Right.
Reoffending.
And you don't often hear the word recidivism, and so I get chills when I hear recidivism. But Future for Felons,
Yes.
Again, I think the organization is great. I personally am excited and want to be a part of moving forward and helping. But how exactly, how did that happen? How did Futures for Felons get birthed?
Okay. Well, let's take it back to when I first got off drugs. When I first got off drugs and uh, gave the Lord a yes. And at this time, the Lord began to speak to me, and I began to write it down. And one of the things He said was, "I'm sending you to a people who society has rejected, because although society has rejected them, I have not." Okay, so that's what I heard that clearly. He said that, so I wrote that down. Okay, and then let's say fast forward a year later, I'm now married. I'm teaching Bible study. My wife was there. Matter of fact, she was at that time. It was only her, so I was just teaching, and she was the only one there. And we were talking. I believe we were in Hebrews chapter 4. It was basically talking about how Jesus was a more effective high priest because he could be touched with the feelings of our infirmities.
Yeah.
Okay, he knows what it means to be tempted. He knows, so he could relate to us. Yeah. And so I was talking about that. And it was just the teaching was going on, and it just hit me there that okay, this is my assignment because I can relate. In a sense, I felt like, okay, I'm a high priest for felons because I can relate to what they're going through because I go through the same thing.
Right.
So right there, I just knew that was my assignment right there. Boom.
So
right
how difficult was it, though, for you to just move forward with it? I hear a lot of people talk about, the Lord spoke to them and they didn't want to do it, and they didn't think, kind of like Moses,
Right,
this.
right, right.
I'm not an eloquent speaker,
Right.
and I don't know how to do this. So, I mean, how did you move forward?
Well, I think my wife was very instrumental there.
Yeah.
Because when it hit me, I shared it with her immediately, and ever since then, she's been a force, pushing me like, okay, because actually the Lord also has shared something with her. This is before we married, and this is along those lines,
Okay.
So she had, and she, so it just came together, and so as soon as I realized that, then my mind went back to what I wrote, the Lord said to me, that He was called to people who society has rejected, and so I just said, gave the Lord a yes, Lord, okay, and we're gonna, and since then it's just been
So
going forward.
you didn't have to twist your wife's arm to get her to
No,
buy into it.
no, I
You,
didn't.
it's funny. I heard your wife speaking to a group one day, and she said, "We're willing to die for this cause."
Yes, absolutely. We are willing to
And it blew me away.
Right.
Like, who says that anymore?
Right.
Who does that anymore? Really has a cause
Yes.
that they're willing to die for. They're
Right.
willing to lay their
Right.
lives down
Right.
for.
Right.
And that's a great thing to have someone
Right.
like you and Angel
Yeah.
who really are willing to give it all up
Yes,
for this
absolutely.
cause.
Absolutely.
And man, I tell you, we're excited for you on this. So I want to talk now the really touchy stuff, and that's funding.
Right.
How do you get funded?
Right.
Where do you get money from to do the things that you want to do for uh, the avocation
Right.
of felons? But before we get there, and we'll do that on the other side of the
Yeah.
break, but before we get there, what type of things or events do you foresee having for Futures for Felons that the community can be a part of?
Well, right now we do have a rally coming up on May 19th, but even before then, we meet every Wednesday. Between the hours 5:30 to 6:30, right there, right before Wednesday night Bible study
Right.
at the church. We meet there, and although right now the focus when we meet is discussing uh, um, about the rally, and we're planning for it. But even after the rally, we're going to continue to meet.
Okay.
Okay, and so just showing up there, and if we can just come together and just put our heads together, we can we can we can tackle this beast. We can take
Yeah.
this beast down if we just come together as a people, as the church. We can. This is basically not any different than the civil rights with Dr. King, and this is it's not any different.
I agree.
It's not this is.
You know what I would love for this area. I thought about those meetings on Wednesday. Coming up, and I mentioned to Angel maybe once a month. We have Bible study on Wednesday. If we did a Facebook Live, for that meeting where people like myself and other people in this area and other areas who can't physically come to the meetings, maybe they can tune into the live.
Right,
and
right.
Maybe they can ask some questions on there or something. That may
Okay.
be something to
Okay.
pray about
Okay.
and see if we can do that.
Absolutely.
And especially after the rally.
Yes.
When you're having meetings,
Mhm.
Trying to brainstorm on
Mhm.
what are we going to do next.
Absolutely.
Then maybe we can get some good ideas from
Absolutely.
people on that. I think that
Absolutely.
would be really, really good. What are some other things that you would like to do in the future?
Right now, I'm glad you asked that question. We have because there's a lot of analogies that that the Lord puts in my spirit, and so one is right now we're trying to make it into a play.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that highlights what felons go through. It's an analogy, and I actually just wanted to use it as a skit for the rally. But when I talked to the writer, he was like, "This would be better as another event totally by itself because he
Wow.
could really do some things with it. So I
Wow.
basically told him what was in my head, so to speak,
Man.
and so he's working on that.